You can drive for 50 miles through northern New Hampshire and not pass a single town. Just forests, mountains, and the occasional gas station. It makes some folks wonder, does anybody live up here? Well, the truth is they do. In fact, more than 1.4 million people call New Hampshire home. It's one of the safest, healthiest, and most well-educated states in the country. The economy is strong, unemployment is low, and people keep moving in year after year. But here's the twist. Most of them live in just one part of the state. Way down in the south, near the border with Massachusetts, the towns are full, the roads are busy, and the jobs are steady. Head north, though, and everything changes. No cities, few houses, and a lot of space in between. So to really understand why it feels like no one lives in New Hampshire, we first have to look at how its people are spread out, and how that's been changing over time. Population landscape, trends, and demographics. New Hampshire may look quiet, but it's far from empty. As of mid-2024, over 1.4 million people live in this small state, and that number has been rising for more than a century. Back in 1900, the population was only around 412,000, so it's more than tripled since then. Most of the people live in the southern part of the state, in cities like Manchester, which has over 115,000 people, and Concord, the state capital. But once you head up north, the towns get smaller and houses can be miles apart. And that's when it starts to feel really empty. Even though the whole state has a density of about 156 people per square mile, which is higher than many western states, the open spaces in the north make a big impression. Between 2010 and 2022, the state grew by about 6%, which is a bit slower than the national average, but still a healthy sign. One big shift is the age of the people living here. The average age is now 43, and the number of people over 65 has gone up by nearly 60% since 2010. So while more people are moving in, the state is getting older, and in many areas, especially outside the cities, it's getting quieter too. Migration and workforce dynamics. So while New Hampshire's population is growing, much of that growth comes from older adults, not babies. New Hampshire doesn't have many babies being born. In fact, it often ranks among the lowest in the country for birth rates. Between 2010 and 2017, 6 out of 10 counties saw more people passing away than being born. So how does the state keep growing? It mainly depends on people moving in from other places, especially from nearby states. In 2023, nearly 40,000 people moved to New Hampshire, drawn by good jobs, peaceful towns, and beautiful outdoor spaces. At the same time, a lot of people who live here work somewhere else. About 13% commute out of state, mostly to Boston, just over the border. They live in New Hampshire to enjoy the lower taxes and quiet life, but earn their paychecks in higher-paying jobs across state lines. That's a big reason why New Hampshire's household income looks high, even though not every local job pays top dollar. Still, the state faces a challenge. With an older population and fewer young families, it needs to keep attracting new people to stay strong. If that slows down, New Hampshire could face worker shortages, especially in the north, where jobs and people are already harder to find. High, hidden costs of living. Even though people are moving to New Hampshire, not everyone can afford to stay. The cost of living here is about 10% higher than the US average, and a big part of that comes from housing prices. In 2023, the average home cost more than $417,000, and monthly mortgage payments often top $2,000. That's a lot, especially for younger families or people without high-paying jobs. And while the state doesn't charge income or sales tax, it does have some of the highest property taxes in the country. Many homeowners pay over $6,000 a year, which can feel like a surprise, especially for folks moving from cheaper places. This high cost can make it hard for people to settle in, especially in the northern and rural parts where jobs pay less but property taxes still hit hard. So even though New Hampshire has jobs and natural beauty, the price of living here can quietly push people away or keep them from coming in the first place. And that's one more reason why some parts of the state feel so wide open. Not because no one wants to live there, but because not everyone can afford to. Geographic and environmental influences. New Hampshire may be small in size, but its land is full of mountains, forests, and lakes, and that shapes where people can live. In the north, the White Mountains and thick woodlands make the land harder to build on, and winters can be rough, especially up near Mount Washington, where the weather is some of the wildest in the world. Because of that, most people live in the southern part of the state, close to highways in the Boston metro area, where jobs and roads are easier to reach. That's why if you visit the mountains or drive through the forested areas, it might feel like no one's around, even though over 1 million people live in the state. Those quieter places aren't empty. They just have fewer permanent homes and more tourists and cabins than year-round neighbors. In fact, tourism is a big part of life up north, with visitors coming for skiing, hiking, and the peaceful scenery. But the same geography that makes it beautiful also makes it harder to build cities or big neighborhoods. The state works hard to protect its natural environment, and that's part of what gives New Hampshire its special charm. So even if some areas feel empty, that quiet is exactly what many people are looking for when they choose to live or just visit here. A slower pace. Now let's be honest, for some folks, New Hampshire just feels a little boring. In fact, one list ranked it the 14th most boring state in America, and depending on where you go, you might understand why. In the northern and more rural areas, there aren't a lot of malls, theaters, or big city events, and some towns don't even have a grocery store open past 8 p.m. If you're someone who loves nightlife, concerts, or 24-hour diners, New Hampshire might not be your scene. But if you're the type who prefers quiet mornings, mountain hikes, and a sky full of stars at night, this place can feel like paradise. A lot of people move here on purpose for that slower pace to get away from the noise and crowds. So what might seem boring to some is actually peaceful and intentional for others. It all depends on what kind of life you're looking for. Because in New Hampshire, excitement doesn't always come with flashing lights. Sometimes it's just the sound of the wind through the trees. Harsh winters. Part of the reason some towns in New Hampshire feel so quiet, especially in the north, is because the winters here are long and tough. Sure, the snow is beautiful, but it also makes life harder. Even southern cities get over 60 inches of snow each year, and places like Berlin get over 80 inches. Way up on Mount Washington, it snows more than 280 inches a year. That's taller than a 2-story house. When it snows that much, just getting to work or the store can turn into a challenge. You'll be out shoveling in the dark, scraping ice off your windshield at 5 a.m., and driving on icy, salted roads that slowly eat away at your car. Icy roads, power outages, and early morning snow shoveling are just part of life here, and not everyone wants to deal with that. Back roads in the mountains are often unpaved, and even when they are, they're not always easy to keep clear in a storm. For people who love skiing or snowshoeing, winter is a dream, but for others it's enough to make them move away or stay away. And that's a big reason why so much of New Hampshire stays quiet in the winter. Limited shopping options. For people moving from a major city, shopping in New Hampshire can come as a bit of a surprise. Outside the more populated areas like Manchester, Nashua, or Salem, it's common to drive quite a distance to reach stores like Target, Trader Joe's, or Whole Foods. Most of the larger retail centers are located in the southern part of the state. In contrast, rural and northern areas often have limited options. Sometimes just a local grocery store or a Walmart miles away. That means everyday errands can take longer and require more planning, especially for those used to city life. Small-town residents often rely on local markets or regional chains, and it's not uncommon to travel across county lines or into Massachusetts for more choices. While this quieter retail environment suits those who prefer a slower pace or fewer crowds, it can be a challenge for others. And this limited access to modern amenities quietly shapes where people settle, leaving wide stretches of New Hampshire feeling peaceful, but also more sparsely lived in. Window tint laws. Sometimes it's the little things that make a place feel more or less inviting. And in New Hampshire, even the window tint rules are strict. Unlike many states, you can't have dark tint on your front windows, and the rear ones have to let in at least 35% of the light. Even the windshield is limited to a small strip at the top, just 6 inches, and has to stay light too. Reflective or metallic tints? Not allowed at all. Unless someone qualifies for a medical waiver, there's not much flexibility, and yes, police and inspection stations do check. This kind of regulation may not seem like a big deal, but for newcomers, especially those from states with more relaxed laws, it can feel like yet another extra layer of restriction. And when small rules start stacking up, from tint laws to taxes to winter driving, it affects how people experience daily life. Limited job opportunities. Another reason New Hampshire might feel less crowded is the limited job options in certain industries. While the state has a strong economy overall, it doesn't offer the same range of jobs you'd find in bigger, more urban states. If someone works in a specialized field, like film, fashion, or biotech, they may struggle to find local openings. A smaller population means fewer companies and fewer large employers, especially outside of healthcare, education, and manufacturing. That's why many residents commute out of state for work, especially to nearby cities in Massachusetts. For anyone thinking of moving there, it's smart to check the local job market first to see if it matches your skills. Still, there's a bright side. New Hampshire is known for its independent, entrepreneurial spirit. If you're someone who wants to start your own business or work remotely, this quieter, lower-tax state might be a great fit. But for traditional job seekers in niche industries, this challenge may be one more reason the state feels less busy, and why some choose not to stay. Seasonal nature of tourism and business. Another factor that shapes life in New Hampshire is its seasonal rhythm, especially when it comes to tourism. During the summer and fall, the state fills up fast, with visitors flocking in for the lakes, hiking trails, and colorful foliage. Local businesses thrive, but the crowds bring traffic jams, packed restaurants, and longer lines everywhere you go. Then, just as quickly as they came, the tourists leave, and things slow down again. This kind of cycle can feel charming to people who enjoy contrast, but it might feel inconvenient or unpredictable to others. If you're someone who prefers a place that stays steady year-round, this kind of boom and bust tourism pattern might not be ideal. It also affects jobs, as many seasonal roles disappear during the off months. This pattern makes some parts of the state feel bustling one month and nearly empty the next. And over time, that seasonal shift is yet another reason why New Hampshire can seem quieter or more empty than it really is. Limited cultural and entertainment options. While New Hampshire's natural scenery is stunning, the state doesn't offer the same variety of nightlife, arts, or big events that you'd find in a large city. There are fewer concert halls, theaters, museums, and trendy restaurants, especially outside the main cities. If you enjoy a night out on the town or exploring different cultural scenes every weekend, you might feel a bit limited here. Part of that comes from the state's smaller population, and part of it is just a different pace of life. That said, New Hampshire shines when it comes to the outdoors, from hiking trails and ski slopes to lakes and waterfalls. If your idea of a good time is climbing a mountain instead of going to a gallery, then you'll feel right at home. But for folks looking for a busier social calendar, this quiet setting can feel a little too quiet. So, does no one live in New Hampshire? Actually, over 1.4 million people do, and the number keeps growing. They're drawn by the quiet lifestyle, strong economy, and some of the best safety and healthcare in the country. But with low birth rates, high property taxes, and limited job options in certain fields, the state isn't for everyone. Most folks live in the southern cities, while the northern areas remain quiet, rural, and often feel empty. That calmness can be mistaken for a lack of life, but it's really just a different pace. New Hampshire isn't bustling, but it's steady, and that's exactly why some choose it. Thanks for watching. And if you've got thoughts or stories about New Hampshire, leave a comment below. We'll see you in the next one.